parent influencers scare the shit out of me. Like, you're selling your kids online. Have you seen that documentary, Devil in the Family? It's the fall of Ruby Frank. She was like that parent influencer, I think Mormon. It was popular a couple of years ago online, and how she was like abusing her kids, and like in the documentary, well, I guess in real life, one of the kids was found like, starving or something, wandering house to house, trying to find someone to give them food. I don't mean to laugh at that. That's horrible, but that's what happened. I bring this up because I was thinking about like human zoos, and if you don't know what a human zoo is, it's they were like these during like the early 20th century, late 19th century. They would take people, what they call, it was a colonial practice, sorry, and they would publicly display people, usually so-called natural or primitive, for people to come and see them and be like, ooh, like, I mean, it's exactly what you said, as a human zoo, which I think social media is in a way, except we're doing it to ourselves. Watch the first episode of this season. Yeah, but I think this is, I think it gets even worse when you bring your kids into it. Like, I know a guy who's gonna have a child, and he's using his baby to get a diaper sponsorship. Like, just like his child's like a NASCAR car, right? Like, it's just put the labels on the baby and send it out there. Clearly, this episode's about enframing, right? Clearly. This episode's about enframing, which is a concept by Martin Heidegger, the famous German philosopher. I talked about his Being in Time book in the last season, but this week we're specifically looking at enframing. It's the idea that, like, he believes that modern technology has created this situation where we tend to look at nature, including human beings, as standing reserves or resources to be exploited for efficiency. So example, like, you might look at trees for its wood, its shade, or its oxygen, and that's all that you see in trees. Is its potential for productivity, right? Its potential to do something. According to him, this perspective reduces humans and nature to mere function, obscuring the humanity or the naturalness, the messiness of deeper truths about being. Heidegger warns that enframing limits our thought and experience, confining us to a calculated way of thinking, and prioritizes control over more profound understandings of life. See how smooth that came out? That wasn't in my own words. Yeah, but he's actually a lot, right? Like, because we are products, like, we have to enframe ourselves, I guess. Right? Are you a comic who does A or B, and does A and B bringing people to drink? And if you do, you have value, and if you don't, you don't. And that value is placed on you personally, right? People treat you a certain way based off of that value of the free market. We still kind of use, black people and immigrants and trans people and gay people in our voting. And you can see that's, if you read, I'm currently reading Naomi Klein's Shock Doctrine. You can, and I'm sure most of you have read it before, but you can see the process of using culture war to shock normal people into voting against their best interest. And the process of using immigrants, for example, in this country, it's Indian people, and the process of using them as pawns in this electoral game is a form of enframing. Also, like last year, the in Ontario, we had the beluga whales. The beluga whale. So we had this place called Marineland, and it's basically like it's a water park for with animals, like kind of a thing that's, if you watch Blackfish, you see people are getting attacked, the trainers are getting murdered by killer whales and shit, and eventually people were like, you know what, this might not be good. And so they shut them down. And this one, Marineland, it had a song, "Happiness Is." Anyway, it's all right. I'll play the song a bit, and it's gonna get copy strike. So anyway, yeah. So they had this. We had this Marineland. You'd go there and sit in the front row, and the whale foot would crash, and then you'd smell like algae and walk around. And nobody really liked it. I got bee stung there once when I was a kid. That was my fault. I grabbed the bee. But anyway, so now they've closed down, but they have these 30 beluga whales, and they don't know what to do. And the guy that owned it, the whole place is in receivership. He was like, "Oh, I can give them to China. China wants them." But then our government here in Ontario was like, they're hemming and hawing. They were just passing it the buck because nobody wants to make a decision. And so these beluga whales, the guy's like, "I can kill them," and they're like, "No, you can't. You can't just kill, like, what are you, right?" So these beluga whales, which were like, they were like the one of the spotlight attractions. Now they're useless. They have no value, and so they don't know what to do with these things. That's a form of enframing things. See, I called it a thing. Horrible me. Which, like, the all of this, like seeing the influencers, but especially like the beluga whales. I just read "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," which I like. If you haven't read it, it's the book that inspired Blade Runner, both Blade Runner movies. Which I like the movies, but the book is so much better. Like, and I don't mean to be that guy, but the book is just deeper. It's just more cynical. Like, Decker's, a bit of a loser, I find, as opposed to, like, Blade Runner is very cool and very, like, Cybertruck, baby, Cybertruck. Anyway, so yeah, so do androids dream of electric sheep? The entire book is about enframing, like the idea of measuring empathy with a machine, right? Is and that you can tell who is human, who isn't, is literally the metaphor for, and which it is not even a metaphor. It is enframing. You can't, like, the measuring empathy. That you could put it on a scale and measure it, but at the same time, it's so unempathetic, right? To decide who has empathy and who doesn't based off a machine. And in it, everyone's confused about who is a robot and who isn't, because the machine has to tell them who's the robot. And so some people in the book have no idea if they're a robot or not. Decker's like spends half the book panicking and then eventually accepting that the existential idea that he might be. But one of the things they do is the animals in it, like, it's in this society, in this capitalist, post-capitalist or future capitalist society, animals are gone because the earth is, like, just destroyed, and whoever's left there is basically like, right, just not good. And so, like, animals don't exist. And so they walk around with this book. I forget the name of the book, but it's basically like a catalog telling you the value of animals. And Deckard spends the whole book, like, complaining about, he has an electric sheep, and he's just like, if I could get he's trying to get a real animal or something close to a real animal. He's looking at the prices of things. Like, he's like, this is a quote, "I want to have a real animal. I keep trying to buy one, but on my salary," right? Like, everything's debt and everything is, like, on loan, and he can't afford an animal, but he knows if he gets an animal, like a live animal, people will see him differently. And then there's the specials, which are people who have been, the environment has, like, basically rendered them useless in this society. And one of the characters is kind of helping out the androids, I forget his name. I know there's nerds in here watching this going to be like, and good for you. Thank you. So like one of his quotes is like, once pegged as special, a citizen, even accepting a sterilization, dropped out of history. He ceased, in effect, to be part of mankind. They sterilize these people, and then they're just not human anymore. But they're unlike the androids. They're left to roam and do what they want, because on some level they're human. It's a whole bunch of people deciding who is and who isn't human. And that's it. It's a book filled of enframing people who've accepted an ideology and who are just like, I have no value because I don't produce. I'm just this. There's no context to my being. It's such a good book. Up here in Canada, we've been talking about privatizing the post office. Nobody says privatize. I mean, they have, but not openly. But they're talking about how the post office isn't making money. It's losing billions of years. For years, it's been losing billions of dollars. And it's like, and I know they said this in the States too, the need to privatize this thing, but it's a service, right? This is the post office. It's not supposed to make money. It's supposed to connect people. It's delivering mail for people to be connected. That's what it's always was. That's what it always was. Like nobody was making money off of stamps back in the day, unless they were, I don't know, or maybe they were taking $10 bills out of Nana's birthday cards to the grandkids. But right, indirectly, this is enframing, because the people who receive mail, and who don't have the internet, for example, these people are seen as non-valued in their need to connect. I mean, like you privatize the mail, like you privatize, like, again, this service. It would be like, the fire hydrants don't make money. Like, why don't we privatize those? You know what I mean? Next time you have a fire, you got to put a loony into the fire hydrant, or maybe we can throw some, Geico ads on that fire hydrant while it just sits there, not collecting dollars, wasting taxpayers' money. And so whole communities, whole groups of people become enframed. For example, the prison industrial complex, there are so many people and so many jobs, judges, lawyers, people who own prisons, privatize prisons, and people who work in there. There becomes a need to police and create crime, to have crime. And so you take an entire group of people and you criminalize them. And we see this during Reconstruction, as I brought up before, right after slavery, when before slavery, Black people were considered, docile and friendly and loved to work. And then when slavery became the 13th Amendment and became institutionalized, you see that the stereotype of criminality comes in. And so it justifies punishment, right? It's just wild. Whenever I go antique shopping, this shit pops up all the time. Like, that's the thing as a Black person. Antique shopping is pretty hard. Like, because you'll run into something. There's always something, right? There's always something from the past, right? And I mean, we'll get into that with existentialism, but you see, some sort of Pickaninny statue, or, I remember I was doing antique shopping, or just browsing an antique mall place in Burlington or Brantford, one of the two, and I go into this guy's booth, and he has a big area, and he's glaring at me the whole time, and I'm like, I see a flag on the pinball machine he has, and I'm not sure if it's like a Nazi flag or not. It didn't look like it. It looked like one of those like World War I flags, but it was so vague. And I just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna walk around. And then I see, he's still glaring at me, and then I see something else, and then I see something else that's mildly racist, and then I see a framed article about interracial couple who they drove out of town in London, Ontario. And I look at the guy, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, history. See, that's like you as a black person, you might get some like action figures, or you might, find a hate crime when you go antique shopping. It's a roll of the dice. I used to write jokes in Toronto at this coffee shop. And it was like one of those, liberal progressive coffee shops, where like, they put mustard on a donut and charge you $22 for it. It was one of those. And so on the front, they had this like chalk sign that said, we have, it was early on. They had a non-gendered washroom or inclusive washroom, something like that. Which, that's great. I'm all for that. So I used to write jokes at this coffee shop. And then one day I decided, I got to take a pee, like natural. And I go downstairs to the washroom, and there's only one washroom, right? You can't brag about having, non-gendered washrooms when you have less than 2 washrooms. You didn't do anything. You just have limited plumbing. That's what you really have, right? You're like Rosa Parks on a moped, and that's another part of Enframing. It's just like you're using trans people to sell your shitty expensive donuts. You goddamn liberal. I know, I'm Canadian. Liberal means something different.
Remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Also, check out the Substack at gavinstevens.substack.com and everything else at gavinstevens.ca. Thank you.